Shalom Aleichem. We are starting with the Sicha of Eikev Beis, quite an extensive Sicha, which is based on the Farbrengen of Eikev Tavshin Chav Zayin. And what's interesting is when the Rebbe said the Farbrengen on Eikev Tavshin Chav Zayin, which was the Rebbe's father's yard site, Chaf Menachemav, the Rebbe then continued on some of the ideas on Parsha Shoftim as well, which we're going to explore. It builds on the stuff that's in the Sicha that we've learned over here in the Sichas, but it adds some flavor. So let's go back to the fundamental of the Sicha. The Rebbe is here to explain Kol HaMitzvah, where the Rashi says Kipshutai, and Medid Shagada. You might schalta b'mitzvah, Gemara, so you should finish it. And the Rebbe says you have to say Kol HaMitzvah Kipshutai. It's going on all the mitzvahs through which, in honor of Zchus, you'll enter Eretz Yisrael, but because there's a doichet, because in that time, after Rosh Chodesh Shvat of Shnas HaArbaim, they only had a few mitzvahs of the Taryag mitzvahs, and the Rebbe over there said, even though one mitzvah is incredibly great, but nevertheless it wasn't all the complete mitzvahs, without the mitzvahs of Tluis Ba'aretz, Yom Tovim, etc. Then the Rebbe added, also not Rosh Chodesh, because it was possible that they would enter in Eretz Yisrael immediately before the next Rosh Chodesh. So in other words, they didn't know about it because they didn't know that Moshe that would not go into the land would only pass away Shiva Ba'adar in the day that he passed away. And v'chayotze b'zeh. What's chayotze b'zeh? The Rebbe says lahoyer. Some interesting from a historical perspective. Which mitzvahs they had, which ones they didn't. They didn't have the Dinei Avelus, which is connected with the yard site. Uvemela, they also didn't have the mitzvah of Yibum B'chalitza. Why? Shekvar Kalu Mesei Midbar. It's all over. Be'elu Ma'isen Shekasu Ben Chaim Kol Chamayim. They're all here. So therefore, Rashi has to add Kol HaMitzvah is talking about Gemara Mitzvah, the second pshat, even though it's a doichek, because it doesn't say Gemara Mitzvah. It says Kol HaMitzvah. That the Knesset Eretz Yisrael is through the Yidden that finished the Avodah. And now, interesting, the Rebbe says, again, all these nuggets I'm adding are not from the Muga Sicha. If you've been with me before, you know that by now. So the Rebbe says, because even though they didn't have the Nisayin of Avodah Zarah b'negei l'payil, but nevertheless they had to do the tikkun on the Avodah of Baal Pa'or and Cheta Egel. So they were even connected to these Averos that technically they had nothing to do with. They're finishing the Avodah of tikkun on Avodah Zarah. And then Rashi adds, Ves Atzmes Yosef Asher Helu Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim Kavar B'Shechem. And he asks, Moshe was the one bringing them up. Elul, because he didn't finish it. So from here you learn that even those who are not guilty in the Chet HaMeraglim, for example, Moshe, nevertheless, and they didn't finish it Mitzad Oines, nevertheless it's not called on their name. And even the people didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael, but they were under 20, it goes on their name. On the other hand, even beginning a mitzvah without the ability to finish it is nasiyah shal mitzvah, and therefore Moshe did gimel arim miklat, even if they weren't activated yet. And then the Rebbe was medayek. This is all from the Sicha that we learned. The Rebbe was medayek im hischalta b'mitzvah. When they get to a mitzvah that's not a chiyuv on the yachid b'frat, and nevertheless, because you began it, you have to finish it. For example, Bnei Gadam Bnei Uvin, that they started by inheriting their part of Eretz Yisrael on Mizrach HaYarden, so they have to finish the Avodah for everybody else. The Chalutzim Tav Bnei Yisrael. And the Hira Bnei Get, the Chiyuv HaMyuchad B'Ashlichos Ta'afatzim Yanis Chitza for those who started it. And then the Rebbe said, especially that they asked brachas from the Rebbe the Shver, and the brachas were miskayim. So they definitely have to get involved in the Zinyanim. Listen to the words that the Rebbe says. Nehenesa me'harebe, you had benefit from the Rebbe. Pack your bags and travel to do the shlichus. That's the words that Rebbe used. And if not, give the brachas back. Words, huh? Now, that was the And then the Rebbe says, go do your avodah, and that's going to bring all the stuff that you need. Now the Rebbe can then continued on Parsha Shoftim, page 323 in the Teres Menachem of Tavshin Chav Zayin, Chelik Nun. The Rebbe says over there like this. I want to continue what we spoke about previously. In the Rashi of Kol HaMitzvah, that Eina Nikdas HaMitzvah Ala Hashem Gemra, that Kena Nishkachat, nobody grabbed the point that this is Negea to the time that we're living in, the end of the year. Uvagdama. When we said Kriyas HaMitzvah goes on the person who finishes, it's not only if the person who started didn't finish it because of a chisaron in the Aveda, they gave into the Yetzer Hara. No, even if Al Pi Torah they couldn't finish it, it still goes on the person who did finish it. And so too, even if when he didn't start the mitzvah, because Al Pi Torah was busy in doing other things. For example, Rashi brings that Atzmas Yosef Moshe was busy with, and all the other Yidden were grabbing all the stuff they need from Mitzrayim, Nisasku Bebiza. Now, it wasn't because they wanted the Kesef Ezav, but because they had a mitzvah of the Eibishter. Seemingly because the reason that the Yidden didn't keep themselves busy with that initial Yosef was Al Pi Tzivah HaTorah, Mitzad Nefesh HaMalikis. So, Nimtza, Shemitzad Mitziyutza Ma'amitis Lo Yayu Shayachim. Comes out that mitzad their mitzius, they weren't even shaykh to this mitzvah. It wasn't for them. But nevertheless, because they, people that were under 20 and now under 60, finished the mitzvah goes on them. In other words, regardless of Al Pi Torah, you couldn't finish it, you couldn't start it, it goes on them. Says the Rebbe, this is the period of the incredible mile of our generation, which is the Dor, the Ikvus of the Mashiach that will complete Kavanas, V'tachlis, Kol Abriyas, Olam, Kol Abriya Kula. Why the whole purpose of creation and Seder Ishtalshus is because the Eibishter wants to do it. And this is Avodas Yisrael b'meshach kol hadoros, to clean up. It's an interesting lesson, to clean the Dira, Olam Hazeh, Kemashal, a Melech Basav Adam that wants that they should make him a nice house. You have to clean it so that the Melech can come into the Dira. That's what the Torah says. But the Rebbe says, but in Tanya, it gives the mashal of the Melech Gadol V'Rav that shows his love to a simple person who's in the dumpster. So that's B'negea, the king doing his job to take the Yid to schlep him out. But to make a home for the king, it's not a dumpster. You have to make a clean house. Nekiah. And the Gemara Avodah, the Shleimus will be Lasid Lava. And that's definitely going to be to the generation of Dara Dikvas and Mashiach. And it's understood that the fact that the Doros HaRishonim didn't finish this Avodah is not because of any chisaron. Adarabah. Already in Golos Mitzrayim, the Yidden were mevar 202 nitzutzim. Gam Eida Rav Aloyman. And since then, there's only been 86 nitzutzos that we've done it throughout all the generations. Then there were the generations of the Nevi'im and the Skenim, Tanoim, Ameiroim. However, the Avodah of our generation, Dar Dikvas and Mashiach, is only pachim tanim, small little things. Two puts in the kneplach, which is polishing the buttons. But nevertheless, because only through the avodah of Ikvus and Mashiach will complete the avodah of cleaning the home, and through that will be accomplished the kavan of klalos seder ishtalshlus. There should be a dir lo yisparok tachtonim. Ein mitzvah nikres el al shem gomer. Ulahoyer, to point out that the ilui of the gomer ha-mitzvah has nothing to do with how much or in kamus, in quantity or in quality they did. Even if they're doing something small, puts in a kneblach, there's an ilui of gomer ha-mitzvah. And not like the people who think that right now I have to be busy with Yichudei law. Who cares if I'm Zori and Anias Amin Yeshmei Rabbi? This connects to the first Sicha of Eikev, that the small things matter. No, you have to finish the Pachim Tanim. There are Vedas Pshutas, like Amin Yeshmei Rabbi Ba'oifen Pashut, and don't talk during davening. Rebbe said then that I got a complaint from somebody who says that we're talking too much davening. Not from the Gabbai or the Shamish, but from one of the Nashim Tzidkanis. Rebbe mentioned it. And through the Ashlomas Pachim Tanim, we finish the Avodah of all the Deiros. It's powerful stuff. If you think about it, it's like as silly as it's motivational. It gives us an appreciation of what we're doing. We did the whole avodah of last Lo Yisparach Datem. Comes the Rebbe and concludes, and so too neged avodah of Chodesh El. Chodesh El is the time that we have the opportunity to fix the avodah of the whole year. Like we find ourselves, you made Shuvah, there's 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that include the 7 days of the week. And so too, in the days of El, you complete all the days of the year. Not only when it comes to tshuva on things that you shouldn't have done, but even to fulfill and complete the good stuff that you started. That through the Chodesh El you get a shleimus. And more specifically, if there was a lack in the chayas and asik Torah mitzvahs that you only did mitzvahs and nashim l'umada, autopilot, or as the Frierdiker Rebbe said, fashlafen, sleeping, Chodesh El you could fix it. That through that Chodesh El you wrap yourself in talis and tefillin, and you do it with a chayis pnimis and eludika oifen, eludika method. Then you bring chayis in the mitzvahs that you didn't do the whole year in the right way. Like it says in Tanya, that you could have a tikkun for all the kavanah you didn't have by one moment of kavanah. And even if your Torah mitzvahs were great, but could be that the whole year you only did them in a keich from the Eibishter, so it's the le'ela, like a tzaddik. Now you need it mitzad avodah satshuv mitzad lamata. So basically the completion ends everything. It elevates us to the highest levels, which I think is a very powerful thing. Now, the Rebbe then continued and spoke about the Atzmos Yosef and why they were busy with the Biza, but that's quite extensive, independent of the Nakuda that we were learning. So, l'chaim l'shalom.